It's time for another edition of Lewis at Large, 60 minutes of smart talk radio featuring guests from all walks of life in conversation with your host, Warner Lewis. So sit back and lend us your ears for the next hour. Now here with today's first guest is the host of Lewis at Large, Warner Lewis.
Well, welcome everybody to another segment of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck, and of course that means some smart talk radio is in your future, and this segment, wow, we are very excited about this. Aspen has an extraordinary story. It's told in a brand new work called Girl in the Woods, a memoir. It is about a extraordinary and unfortunately brutal event that happened to her and her resulting activities and what happened in her life over the next several months and years, and bringing us to present day. A unique story, a heartening one, although indeed, and we're very happy to have her here. Aspen, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you bet. And again, I know you do a lot of these on the old book tour, so to speak, but we are very pleased to have you here. If you would share with our Lewis at Large listeners, and again, you're a writer in Greenwich Village, and so I know writing is not new to you, but to talk about such a personal story in such a highly personal and emotional way, share with our listeners, if you would, exactly the trigger event here, and then bring us, then we'll go from there.
Okay, so this is, I guess, the story of how on my second day of my freshman year of college, before I had begun classes and before I had removed the colorful construction paper name tag from my dorm room door, I was raped by another student, a fellow freshman, in my dorm room. And I reported the rape to the college, and I testified and he testified, and the mediator concluded that the findings were inconclusive, and they allowed him to remain on campus. And then, for reasons that were never really explained to me, they moved him from the other large freshman dorm across the campus into my dormitory and moved me off campus. And then I left, and I decided I was going to try to physically, literally reclaim my body and prove to myself that I was safe in the world, in the body that I had to live in. And I was going to do that by walking from Mexico through California and Oregon and Washington State along a continuous wilderness footpath, just a trail through the woods in the desert called the Pacific Crest Trail, all the way to Canada. And it's a 2,650-mile trail, and so I did. I flew to L.A., and my dad took vacation to meet me there, and he took me down, drove me down. We took a father-daughter road trip to the Mexican border, and amid hills of dust, along the corrugated, rusty metal border fence that kind of rippled along the border as far as we could see in both directions, he dropped me off and left, and I was there alone at the border with my little backpack and my water bottles and tons of candy, and I started to walk. And the book is the story of the walk, and it was absolutely different for me than anything else I had written, in that I wasn't sure what in the state of the walk, I was sort of in a state of confusion. It's sort of like what Jack Kerouac once wrote. Right. I had nothing to offer anyone except my own confusion.
Right.
And the mission of the memoir is really to make meaning from action and to get to the truth of the heart of the matter and discover kind of like the punchlines of the stories you've been telling all your life.
Aspen, I don't want to dwell on this, but I just want to quickly revisit what happened at Colorado College. That school is known for being relatively certainly a liberal arts college, if not a liberal slant on things, particularly in the community in which it resides, which is fairly conservative community.
Absolutely.
And I'm very curious as to your opinion, and we understand it's coming from your perspective as what we want, is why was their reaction what it was? What if you try to do the math on it, so to speak, what's your take on it?
All right, here's my take. I don't know. It's a good question. I think that it doesn't really matter right now in the current climate if a school is liberal or if a school is conservative or if a school is progressive or if a school is backwards. All schools have brands, and they put a lot of money into the creation of their brands and the defense of their brands and the, heightening and kind of like idealization of their campus life. And it is not in the best interest of any of these private brands to have a rape conviction on their campus.
Right.
And so it is therefore not in their best interest to find out what is true. It's in their best interest to make it go away and obscure the truth and to really obstruct justice. And it's not specific to Colorado College, but I would say liberal arts schools are doing no better than,
the big public university. Well, because this is an issue that's facing the largest universities in the country all the way down to the smallest private schools. And so I'm sensitive to that. I'm also curious, again, having only been there for a very short time, probably for a short orientation period, and as you said, even before your classes started, you probably wouldn't have had the time to develop any real deep friendships yet, and so therefore having people, so to speak, on your side and speak in your behalf, was that tough? Because you just didn't know anyone well enough yet?
Yeah, I chose a school at which I was the only student from my hometown. I was the only student from Newton South High School in my class at Colorado College and probably in the whole school. Right. And I loved that in theory. I actually chose CC for the anonymity it would provide me. I thought it was such an exciting idea to be able to move somewhere new and start entirely over without the reputation that you had, without the associations that kids had from middle school or from elementary school, and to just get to remake yourself and be whatever you wanted to be. Was my very naive thought. And so when I arrived there, I literally knew no one. And on my second night, I'd met all three of the other kids who had been in my dorm room that night during a fire drill.
That'll happen. Everybody standing outside in their pajamas, wondering what's going on. Yep.
Yeah, the sprinklers are going off, and the red and red and yellow lights are just lighting the sprinklers, and everyone's just super awkward and cold.
Well, let's talk a little bit. Again, if you just joined us, we're talking to Aspen Mattis, and she's written an extraordinary work called Girl in the Woods, a memoir about a brutal attack that happened to her early on in college and the resulting walk up and through the Pacific Crest Trail on the West Coast. Aspen, we've had guests in the past that have done the Appalachian Trail. We've had guests that have hiked in various parts of Europe, climbed mountains, et cetera, many times for sort of boosting their psyche, so to speak, maybe to the next level, or doing it, as they say, just because it's there. Yours,
no one's doing it just because it's there.
Right.
That's a lie to themselves, right. I think.
Well, you were doing it, as you said earlier, in many ways, to learn maybe about yourself, a little bit of get away, a little bit of put yourself back together again. Were you in the past, though, most people that do these kinds of hikes do a lot of preparation, a lot of research, training, et cetera, et cetera. Were you already in that kind of shape, so to speak, or did you do that kind of pre-walk prep?
So I think it's I could give you two different answers and they'd both be true and they'd both be so different. So physically, I did nothing to prepare. I just said at camp. At college, I spent most of my time you know, eating candy and, not doing exercise. I wasn't training and I wasn't definitely not preparing, but I had always had like good lungs and a good heart because I used to race cross country and I raced skiing as well. But I did nothing at all physically to prepare. But I had been a hiker in the summers, like with my family, and also the summer before college began, actually, I walked 1,000 miles alone from Mount Whitney to Ashland, Oregon. And the summer before that, when I was 17, I hiked the John Muir Trail alone, which is 220 miles through like really remote mountains in the High Sierra. So I had done a lot of solo backpacking as a teenager as well.
Well, let's get you on the Pacific Coast Trail. Tell again, it's 2,000 some miles. So, and it took you approximately almost a half a year. Is that correct?
Almost a half a year. It took me like 5.5 months.
Well, undoubtedly, we can't talk about the walk without talking about some of your adventures along the way, one of which, and only in the interest of time, because I'd really like to spend more time if we could, but you met your future husband, did you not, on that walk?
That's correct, yeah.
Well, tell us about that encounter.
Yeah, so in Bend, Oregon, which is like a town in north central Oregon, after 2,000 miles of walking along this trail, I met a man. His trail name was Dash. My trail name was Wild Child. Dash, who was also walking from Mexico to Canada. And it turned out he had started out at the Mexican border just 2 days after I had. And for 3 months, we'd been within about a day's walk of each other, a couple days, trekking north in sync. And in Bend, Oregon, we finally met. And I thought he was super cute, and he thought I was super interesting. And we decided we were going to finish the trail together. And we did. We were 600 miles from Canada, and in those 600 miles, we really got to know each other really well. And he was the first person who... So everyone who's walking from Mexico to Canada is walking for a reason. No one who's like super happy with their life in the quote-unquote real world decides to be homeless and sleep in a tent or, directly on the dirt and deprive themselves of watermelon and toilets for 6 months. So he had a reason for walking, and I had a reason for walking, and we all did. And when he finally asked me mine, and I answered honestly, finally, again, and told him that I'd been raped, he reacted the way that I wished every single person I had told him before had reacted, and I never knew that that was how I needed someone to react. But when he did it, he just opened his arms and held me and kissed me and didn't stop until I stopped crying. And I just remember he held me most of that night.
Was that moment, do you think, Aspen, for you, not only because of your attractive, obviously, to him and who he was in his essence, but was it also kind of a flushing moment for you to let a lot of things out that had been held up for a long, long time?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That and so at that point, now we've really bonded. Not only are we walking together, we've shared some very intense feelings. By the way, if you are comfortable with it, we would like to know his reason for walking.
So his was more complex than mine. I think there are two kinds of people who walk from Mexico to Canada. They're the kind who have had a trauma or have an addiction that they're trying to become free of, or they're trying to fix something about themselves or figure something out. And then the other kind. But so the first kind is kind of walking to find their place in the world. And for me, it was how to feel safe in the body that I had to live in. And for him, he wasn't really walking to find his place in the world, or at least he didn't think he was. He was walking because he didn't believe that a place for him in this world existed. Like, he had worked in finance in Manhattan, he'd worked in aerospace, and he was just unhappy in all jobs, and he kind of believed on the onset of the walk that there was no work that could make him happy. There was nothing in the world he wanted to do. And he was trying to find the path forward.
Right.
And he just quit his job.
Well, some people that we have talked to and that I know personally have done walks, have done climbs because it's almost bucket list for them. It's almost less self-discovery, and it's almost like a notch in a gun, so to speak. I mean, it's like playing golf courses or visiting the capitals of the world or whatever. I'm curious if, in fact, you're looking for yourself, or you're looking to find an answer, whatever the answer is, somewhere along the Pacific Crest Trail or the Appalachian Trail on the East Coast. When you find it and you are 2/3 of the way through, are you emotionally done with the walk, or did you feel like, you know what, I just want to finish now just to finish? When you met Dash and all of this sort of culminated and happened in the synergy and all that, and you got to know each other on the last 600 miles. If that meeting had happened 1,000 miles earlier, would you have finished? Would you both have finished, do you think?
Oh, well, I think, like, when I met him, it was sort of like that was when it first became fun. Like, so I think I probably still would have finished. I wished I had met him earlier. Like, I remember what I thought. I was like, how unfair that you've been so close for so long. And I've been without you. But
that's all different now.
I feel lucky that I had that time, or I wouldn't have been ready when I met him.
Okay, as just a pure functional, practical matter, you mentioned the shower and eating watermelon. Besides those two things, what were the things that you thought, wow, I would give my left arm to something, to get something or other? What else would it have been along the trail?
Like a bath, like just a warm bath when I was really cold. I had weird specific cravings. I'll sound like a crazy person if I detail them, but I became like somewhat addicted to watermelon Jolly Ranchers, so I would carry them with me, and when I would run out, it was just like the saddest thing. Like, I would feel like the sense of loss, as if I had like lost a bracelet that I had treasured. Like, and I think it's because, and I could be wrong, but it had always been my favorite flavor. And when I was a kid, like wandering the fields around my brother's baseball games, and like kind of walking along the rim of the forest along the fields, I would always just like eat watermelon Jolly Ranchers. So it kind of reminded me of that like safe, like it was like special. I don't know, like I had watermelon Jolly Ranchers and I was like doing my thing. And so I craved those a lot. I craved banana bread, like really buttery banana bread with cream cheese frosting.
Hey, you could make me hungry just talking about that stuff, and I'm sitting here. Well, okay, and again, only in the interest of time. The trail ends. You've spent the last 600 miles with who was to be your future husband. The decision to get married or to stay together, so to speak, that probably was made somewhere by, 400 miles outside from the end. When you all ended the trip together, then what happened from there?
Oh, so at the end of the trail, we were not engaged. Like, I could have easily, that could have been it. I could have been like, later, that was fun. And I kind of was, actually. Like, we went for a little road trip in Canada, and I loved him. Like, I was in love, for sure. But we hadn't said it yet. We were both really, like, I had never been in love before, and he was my first boyfriend. Like, really, like, my longest relationship before that was 6 weeks. And he had real relationships before. He was much older. He was almost 30, and I was 19. And he'd had a 6-year relationship. But neither of us had said, like, that we loved each other, though I definitely felt it, and I think he definitely felt it too. But we did say goodbye, and I flew back to Colorado Springs, where I was no longer a student at Colorado College. You know, there was no reason for me to return there other than I I couldn't really think of anywhere else to go. It was just inertia. And so I flew back there, and I moved into a house with a girl named Angela. And I think 10 days, it was either 10 days or 2 weeks from the day we said goodbye, there was a knock on our house door at 10 p.m. I was like, hello, and it was Justin. And he was like, can I come in? And he had just driven straight from California to Colorado, 25 hours without stopping. And, stopping for gas and stuff, but without sleeping. And I was like, sure. And I was super, super happy because he had told me he was going to come, but I didn't really believe that, And
you immediately, let me guess, the next thing you did, you got in the car and you went to Woogland's for a Reuben sandwich. Woogland's Deli.
Oh, my God, I love that place. But no, wait. So you really know Colorado Springs.
Yes, ma'am.
That's so funny.
So from there, so you reunite in Colorado Springs, and then sort of the rest is history, kind of, or not really?
Yeah, so we, one day we went for a walk in the Garden of the Gods, which I'm sure you know. It's like this gorgeous red rock state park with these big, erect, red rocks going up into the sheer blue sky, and it's stunning. And we were walking there, and it's kind of an unromantic story, the story of how we got engaged. I was like, hey, I was just feeling really close to him, and I was like, do you think we'll ever get married? And we had just said I love you probably a couple weeks before that, in February. And he was like, definitely. I was like, and I was so I was just so young. I was like, are we engaged?
Yeah.
And he was like, what?
So did we have a normal, so to speak, wedding ceremony, or was this something a little bit more alternative and something you guys created on your own?
So I was laughing so hard that I missed part of the question.
Okay. Did you have a normal wedding ceremony, so to speak, in the traditional, or was it a little bit more alternative?
I suppose it was fairly normal. It was a small destination wedding. We returned to the Cascade Mountains where we'd met. And our logic was that only people who really loved us and cared about us
would show up.
Would come. But unfortunately, had we been a little bit, had we been thinking, only people with money came, because you have to fly to some remote place in Washington State.
Right.
So yes, all the older people came. So it was a very subdued wedding ceremony. It was probably 40 people, and we had some friends from the trail, this one girl whose name was Songbird on the trail. She played her ukulele during the ceremony, and it was beautiful. It was a mountain garden with flowers and a stone stage and a little waterfall, and it was really green and lush, and I had a pretty white dress, and it was fun.
And you, again, we need to wrap this up, unfortunately. But again, in the interest of time, you are now, you're back in the New York City area, and you're writing. Hard to, beyond the book, how do you see, or do you see, a future in delivering this message in any other channel, in any other way?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't think I'll ever want to stop telling my story just for the purpose of helping other girls and other women and other people see that they are not alone, and the story that they tell themselves that they were the ones that should have prevented this, or I should have done this, or should have done that. No, I want them to see that short shorts, pink short shorts don't cause rape. Weed doesn't cause rape. Rapists cause rape. Nothing causes rape but rapists. And nothing that you do in the aftermath of a trauma is shameful. I asked him to sleep over, and I felt tremendous shame. And I thought I must be crazy. And it turns out that's tremendously common. And almost every person who does it thinks that they must be crazy and thinks that they must be the only one. And so, I think through telling my story and hearing other people's stories and encouraging them to share their own, I want to help revise this culture of silence.
Well, we have been speaking with Aspen Mattis. She is an author, an extraordinary new work, profoundly personal, obviously, called Girl in the Woods, a memoir. Also want to let you all know that a portion of the proceeds of the sale of this book will be donated to RAIN, which is Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. You need to know that. Aspen, how can people find out more about you, some of the other work that you do, and maybe pick up a copy of the book?
Yes, you can get the book at any bookstore in America, like your indie bookstore, Barnes & Noble, or on Amazon, or even at Target, apparently, which is cool. And to find out more about me, my website is aspen-mattis.com, because aspenmattis.com was taken.
There's two of you out there. Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much for telling us and sharing with us this decidedly personal story, and best of luck to you in your other works and writing and spreading the word, and would love to have you on again sometime.
Thank you so much, and I would love that. This was truly wonderful.
Great. You bet. We will be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.